Think you're busy? Try telling that to time and productivity expert and New York Times bestselling author Laura Vanderkam. She has an easy hack to unlock hours in your day. That's more time for hobbies, for family, or absolutely nothing at all. On This Dying to Ask, where we tend to waste the most time, how to keep a time log, why Fridays are the best day to plan out your next week, and what is effortful fun, and why is it worth planning? So Laura, true story, I've had a Post-it on my desk at the TV station for about 4 years saying, reach out to Laura Vanderkam. I've been a big fan of your work for years, and I wanted to have you on the podcast. So it's taken a few years. The last time actually I had started the email to ask you if you had time to be a guest, you had just announced you were pregnant with your fifth and heading out on maternity leave. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to give it a little bit of time.
Well, it was a while ago now. So
it was a while ago
from having kid number 5. He's 4 years old now. So yeah.
And that's how time passes. If you don't watch, that is how time passes. How did you become so fascinated by studying time? Like, how did you become this time and production specialist?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's not because I'm always on time everywhere. I mean, I try to be, but I am not. But I am fascinated by time because it is such a universal constraint on everybody. Everyone has 24 hours a day. Everyone has 168 hours in a week. And obviously there are people who have more resources, who have more money, more connections, more talents than the rest of us, but they still have that same amount of time. And there are still things that they cannot have other people do for them. Like, you know, even Beyonce can't have somebody sleep for her, right? Like this is.
And if anybody could, it would be her.
It would be her, right?
Yeah.
So we're all working within this limits. And so it's something that we can kind of all figure out together, how we use our time in a way that money, for instance, doesn't work as well. Some people clearly have so much more than others, but we are still all working with the same building blocks when it comes to time.
So what were you doing right before you started studying time? Were you writing just in general, or what actually got you to that?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a couple years as a journalist, working for different publications, writing different things, but I was always aware of just how drawn I was to other people's schedules. Like I would always ask about a day in the life and, oh, well, what did you do? How did you make that work? It's like, well, when you keep being interested in a topic and then you start writing more about it and then other people kind of react to that, you're like, okay, well, here's the mutually agreeable thing of a topic I enjoy writing about and other people are willing to read about. And, started writing about it and here we are.
One of the things you started doing early was having people keep time logs. And I mean, you have studied the logs of hundreds, maybe thousands of people at this point. And literally people track minute by minute what they did in a day. I've tried this. And what I've been amazed by every single time I've done it is how much time I'm doing stuff where I think I'm being really productive or really pulling stuff off, and I'm really not. Like, there is a lot more time in that day.
There is. And that is actually one of the shocking things people discover when they track their time. And I don't know why it is. I guess it's because so much of time passes mindlessly that we focus on the points where we are incredibly busy or things, there are a lot of things happening. And we don't notice all the time where it's a little bit more nebulous, a little bit more ambiguous what's going on. But a lot of time can kind of disappear into that. And just as something for people to think about, I always do this equation for people that with 168 hours a week, if you're working 40 hours, so a full-time job, and sleeping 8 hours a night, so that is 56 hours per week, you still have 72 hours for other things. It probably doesn't feel like it, but where are those 72 hours? What's going on with them? Maybe some amount is spent on housework or caring for family members, running around, whatever else, but let's find out, right? Let's find out where it is so that we can decide how much time we would like to be spending on all these different categories of life.
And so when people really do that deep dive into their own lives and what they're doing all day long, what are the benefits that can come about from being honest with yourself?
Well, a lot of times people see that there is space for something that they have been telling themselves that they just do not have time to do. So for instance, a couple years ago, I decided to start singing in a choir on Thursday nights. And I hadn't sung for several years at this point. And I was sort of like, well, I have all these kids, I have to be there in the evening to deal with them. The logistics are going to be challenging. But then I'm like, I'm putting these kids to bed like 6 out of 7 nights a week. I could probably go one night a week and do something else. They would still have those other 6 with me. It wouldn't be the end of the world. And so I think that's the kind of thing that people often say. They'll be like, oh, I have no time to exercise. And then they look and like, well, could I find 30 minutes 3 times a week? Maybe, right? Like maybe I could find that time somewhere. And I find this is actually really empowering. Because, we've been telling ourselves these stories of having no time, and then we become passive observers of our own lives. Whereas when we accept that some time is available to us, perhaps not as much as we want, but some, then we can start to fill our time with things that bring joy to ourselves and others.
There used to be a lot more, I feel, quiet time in our lives because we didn't have as many distractions. We didn't have the obvious things like social media and 17 million things we could stream. There was kind of less to do. And in some ways, maybe that's why we felt like we had more free time. Maybe.
No, well, here, I got to tell you that I collect historical time referencing stuff, like magazines from the past where people are talking about their daily lives. So not history that has been written by the experts looking back, but people talking about their own lives. And people have always felt incredibly busy.
Have they really?
Yeah. I mean, I was reading a business magazine from the 1950s, and, somebody had asked executives, like the big topic at the time, like if tax rates were lower, would people work more so that they could, because the marginal tax rates were lower. And all the executives were like, there's no way we could possibly be working more than we are now. We're on all the time. Like
I've got a 3-hour martini lunch.
Well, they may have, but, or there was like women's magazines from the same time too, and far fewer women were working for pay at the time. But they would still talk about like, oh, how you have your busy day, and we're trying to fit these things into your busy life. And the particular busy life was like, you had a hair appointment and you also had to wax the floors on the same day or something. But it was just, that's how people felt, right? And since time is all about our impression of it, people have always felt fairly starved for time.
Wow. I'm not sure if I'm comforted by that or I'm horrified by that.
People are people. I mean, we can try to pretend that we're incredibly different from everyone who came before, but it may not be true.
How do you manage time just yourself? I mean, what does your planning look like to make sure that you're allotting the appropriate amount of your energy and time to be able to deal with not only your responsibilities, but some of the things that just fire you up?
So I am a big proponent of weekly planning. So I have a set time every week, more or less, where I sit down and I look at the upcoming Monday to Sunday week. And I ask, what is most important for me to do in 3 different categories: career, relationships, and self. So career, obviously professional; relationships, things with friends and family; self, things I'm doing for my own physical, spiritual, mental, emotional health, right? And I ask myself, what would I like to see happen? What needs to be happening? What I've already committed to? What's important for the upcoming week? Do I have a plan for dealing with everything that has been committed to at this point? Is there anything I'd like to add? And I do this usually on Thursday or Friday, looking forward to the next week. And then I have my marching orders. I do a short daily plan where I figure out what I want to do the next day. But that's just pulling off that list. And it tends to be very, oriented for what are the appointments I have in the day and what am I going to fit in around that. But yeah, that's what I do. And it doesn't take a ton of time at this point because I tend to sort of know what's coming up, and I've hopefully already put stuff on the calendar that I know I'm going to want to do, so it's already there and I don't have to think too much about it. But having that time where you check in and you're going to ask yourself what's happening and what I'd like to see happening can make life feel a lot more calm.
Yeah. I have a friend who she starts her planner by planning her fund. Like that's the first, and she has a very busy professional life and family, and she plans the fun stuff first. Then she fits the other things around it. Now she works for herself, so there is a little bit of like flexibility for that. But I've always kind of liked that. I'm like, you start with something to look forward to. What a novel idea.
And that's actually one of the things when people ask me about this, and I'm sort of teaching them how to do this weekly planning, and then they come back with these plans, and I'm like, okay, what are you looking forward to? And if they can't answer that question, then we have to go back and go put in something, at least 1 or 2 things that you are genuinely looking forward to in the next week? Not like, oh yeah, my kid has a birthday party. That's exciting. Well, sure, it's a
Yeah.
priority, but are you actually looking forward to that? And if you're not, like, we still need to put something else that's for you in the course of the week. And when people do that, planning starts to take on a different vibe entirely. It's not just about planning things we have to do, it's planning things we want to do. And
Is there any research that shows paper planner versus digital planner tends to work better? Does it matter?
what matters is that you do it. So if there's something that you are going to stick with, like if you're the
Yeah.
kind of person who wants to have that separation from all the digital inputs and sit down with, a cup of coffee and your planner and a nice pen, and that's how you get in the mental space to think about it, that's awesome. But many people, their calendars are already electronic, so if they're pulling from that, it makes more sense to have something that's digital that can be quickly altered
Right.
if it needs to be. So,
It's
it's
let me
really
just hold
up
up
to you.
as I
Yes.
am like every stereotype you just mentioned, holding up my nice pen and my paper planner.
It's good. I like
Yeah,
this.
I like it. I like it. What? Let me just play devil's advocate. Some people will say you can plan everything out. You take all the spontaneity out of your life. You're so regimented. When you get a client who pushes back and goes, "This is just too much," what's your usual response to them?
Well, I don't plan every minute of my life in the sense that I tend to have certain priorities for any given day, and then there tends to be space around it. I tend not to like to have every single minute spoken for, partly because the more open space you have in your life, the more you can take advantage of opportunities that come up, or the space for thinking, like, or if something goes wrong, right? That things go wrong, like you need open space to deal with that. But I would push back on this too. I mean, there's a misnomer of planning. Planning is not saying that I can exactly indicate what the future is going to look like. Like every single minute is going to bow before my almighty planner and what I have put in it. Because obviously we all know life doesn't work that way. I mean,
Right.
you do that and then you get in a car accident or somebody's sick or, there's a leak in the basement, you have to deal with it. But when you have decided what is most important to you in the upcoming week, you can make sure that you do those things first, even when life is coming at you and all these problems are happening. So when you lose internet access at your house for a week, so you're having to like go to Starbucks in order to get anything out the door, you know what you actually have to get out the door. I mean, that's happened to me, right? Like I like, well, these are the things I have to file this week. And so, I'm making sure I'm in some place with connectivity to do this. But if I hadn't known that, I would just be in a panic of like, nothing's happening. I'm missing deadlines left and right. So that's why we want to know what we're doing so that we can pivot wisely in the moment.
And then having that organizational efficiency, at least I find more maybe for women than men, or maybe that's just my experience in my household. To me, it gives you this calmness to be able to really appreciate other parts of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, partly one of the reasons I have people plan in three categories: career, relationships, and self, is we want to have things happening in all three categories. And many people, when they plan their upcoming weeks, like they know they're supposed to plan their work weeks, right? Like they've got a general idea that you need to figure out what's due in the next week. What have I agreed to do? And then they don't think about the rest of life. And so it just kind of happens. But it's a lot of time to just have happen. I mean, if you got the 72 hours to play around with, you might want to ask, well, what are my intentions for that time?
Mhm.
Some of it will obviously be reactive to the needs of the people around you, but not all of it. And the upside of making a three category priority list for the next week, it's pretty hard to make a three category list and then leave one of the categories blank. Like people just don't do that. They're like, I have to put
Right,
something in all
right.
three categories. So that right there can help you have a little bit more of a balanced life.
Give you some bumpers on your planning. Do we look at these things differently generationally too?
So people are people. And so
Are they, Laura? No, I'm kidding.
yeah, we're all humans and we all have similar quirks in being, it's hard to think about ourselves in the future. We tend to have a bias to whatever we are feeling in the moment. We can feel overwhelmed when it looks like there's a lot coming at us. We have a tendency to do whatever is screaming loudest right in front of us. There's certain differences in how people spend their leisure time just based on what they are used to, but everyone has a reasonable amount of leisure time. But there's some evidence that older people are more likely to do things like read newspapers in their spare time, whereas younger people are more likely to watch videos. But, is reading the comics in the newspaper that much different than watching videos? I don't know if it really is. So we all have
Do
some
different
leisure time.
generations value time differently? I'll give you an example. Like I work in a newsroom where I think we've got 4 generations in there right now. For the generations we would now identify. And I would say that the way each generation views and prioritizes leisure time is a little bit different. And I have learned a lot, truthfully, from our 20-somethings. I love the priority that some of them have put on a little bit more of what we might call balance in their lives. I didn't do that at their age.
Yeah.
And I think it probably would have been good for me.
Yeah, well, we can all learn things from each other. Well, there's also some interesting evidence that people find time more valuable as they get older, though, as they might start to see that they have
As it's running
less
out.
of it.
Yes.
And what that translates into, there's some interesting research into this, that people find everyday moments a little bit more joy producing and exciting. So, when you're young, it's the trip to Paris that gets you excited. When you're older, it might be having dinner.
Trip to Costco.
That gets you excited, right? So it's just, our levels of figuring out what would bring real joy to us may change as time becomes a little bit more limited.
That's an interesting point. Well, what are maybe 3 actionable, relatively simple ways that we could learn to look at time a little bit differently, or maybe find a little bit more time in our lives?
Well, first, as we've been talking about, keep track of it. I'm not saying you have to do this for the rest of your life, but for 1 week, log your time and see where it goes. I mean, I track my time on weekly spreadsheets, which I know makes me sound like a ton of fun, but I promise, just 1 week. My spreadsheets have half-hour blocks, so you're not literally writing down every hour the way you're approximating what you did in a half hour, and you can check in 3 times a day. Write down what you've done since the last time you checked in. It only takes a minute or 2 each time, so we're not taking a huge investment. You just want to figure out a rough sense of where your time goes. I promise it will be enlightening if you've never done this before. The second thing you can do is related, but think of your time in terms of weeks instead of days, because I think a lot of people, whatever it is they want to do in their life, they decide that they can't because they can't do it every single day. They're like, Laura, there are not enough hours in the day to get to everything I want to get to. And it's true, there aren't. But we don't actually live our lives in days. We live our lives in weeks. So the question is not, can you find an hour every day to exercise? Like for many people, maybe not. But could you find 45 minutes 4 times a week? Well, that's a little bit more accessible, because we're not saying it has to happen at the same time every day and every weekday, but it doesn't have to happen at the same time every day and every weekday. So look at the whole of the week when you are trying to fit things in to life. And then one other quick tip is, when you have leisure time, challenge yourself to do something that is in the category of what I would call effortful fun before you resort to the more effortless pursuits of our digital hobbies, is what I will call them.
Okay.
Of reading headlines, checking email, going on social media, things like that.
So what would be an example of effortful
Read a book.
fun?
Read a book.
Yeah.
So read a book for 5 minutes before you start scrolling around on headlines. And most likely, you will keep going with the book because
Right.
you'll get into it. It just took marginally more effort to start reading, and so we don't. But if you challenge yourself to do this effortful fun for just a few minutes, and then you can go do your effortless variety. I keep tripping up over these words. You will get both kinds of fun. You will probably have a better leisure time balance.
I always tell people that about working out. Like, commit to 3 minutes. Commit to walking around the block, and you'll probably walk around the block again, or you'll go a little bit more, because it doesn't, at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal, and it feels kind of good.
Yeah. It's just the effort to get started much of the time. So once you get started, it's fairly easy to keep going. And if you've only done a few minutes, well, hey, you've still read for a few minutes, which is better than you would have.
And it all adds up to something. So you have another book that you're working on. It's called Big Time. What is it about?
So I'm
Time.
thinking, yeah, big time.
Obviously.
It's about having a lot of time. No, it's about an abundance mindset with time. But I think of this book, sort of my tagline for it is how to fall in love with your schedule. And I think a lot of people have more of a not a love relationship with their schedules. It's more of an adversarial relationship with their schedule. But I feel we can truly enjoy and appreciate how we are spending our time and the time that we have. And there are some very practical ways to do that. And that's what this book is about.
That's fantastic. Well, I love this because I have worked in morning television, and that is all we do is talk about time and sleep. We have two things we talk about obsessively, and not in the nicest of terms most of the time. So I have come to peace and found a way to really love my schedule, and I'm glad that people are making an effort to do that in other areas too.
Absolutely.
So what else are you working on? I mean, you're a prolific writer, podcaster. What are the other things that people can be checking out to keep up with everything you're doing?
Yeah, well, if you like to listen to podcasts, I have two of them. One is called Best of Both Worlds, which I co-host with my friend Sarah Hart Unger. It's about the intersection of work and life from the perspective of people who truly enjoy both. I also have a podcast called Before Breakfast, which is a short every weekday morning tip that will hopefully help you take your day from great to awesome. I recently launched an interview series on that. So one day a week, we have a slightly longer episode where I interview someone cool about how they take their days from great to awesome and any tips they have for the rest of us. And I also have a new newsletter. All the cool kids were doing Substack, so I thought, I'll give it a whirl. So it's called Vander Hacks, and it is just a quick tip every day that will, hopefully make your life better. So please come check that out.
And I do check out all of those. I'm a big fan of all of it. And I'm going to throw out one more plug for your blog. You are a really prolific blogger and have been for years. I do appreciate it. Yeah. No, I understand.
It's funny because people, when I'm telling people to get started, how they want to get started in writing and building a platform because they want to write a book or something like that, I always tell them to start a blog. And people are like, well, how often do I need to be blogging? And I can tell that people don't really want to do it because they do once a week, right, and it's always at the same time. And I know that they've put it on their calendar that they have to write once a week and they do it at this time. I'm like, you are never going to stick with it. Like if you don't intrinsically enjoy it, you won't. But I love it. I love it. So I've been there, 4 times a week roughly since, I don't know, 2009 maybe.
Yeah.
Pretty old school at this point.
It's great. Well, best of luck with the book. When does the book actually come out?
Not till early 2026. So you might have to check out the other stuff in the intervening time.
There's plenty of other stuff to check out. Thank you so much for joining. I'm glad to finally get to catch up and to meet with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm Deirdre Fitzpatrick, morning news anchor and host of Dying to Ask. My guests wrote the book, launched the product, won the race, or cracked the ultimate life hack to live bigger by living smarter.
This opened up a door, and things will never be the same again.
One thing I've learned is that you have to think it before you can do it. Join me for the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the people who turn big dreams into real-life success.
Isn't that an awesome thing to be able to say about any career?
Subscribe to Dying to Ask wherever you listen to podcasts.